What if I told you the idea of financial freedom was strategically placed inside your mind and God is the one who put it there? You would probably, like the rest of us, pursue it very differently, right? But what if I also told you this idea of financial freedom is never fully realized until you have trained and transformed your mind to see it? You would now pursue it very intentionally, not just to get rich, but to also stay rich. And in this video today, you and I are going to discuss those two different sides. One, how to train your mind to get rich, and two, transform your mind to stay rich. And I got my notes ready, and we're going to train your mind, there are two main points we need to talk about. This first one is, number one, understand who you are and tell yourself repeatedly. And yes, I am talking about affirmations, and before you leave, I need you to understand how important this is, because I definitely didn't. And the sad thing for me is that I've been told many times by several of my business coaches, some of them making millions of dollars a year and a couple of them making millions of dollars a month, how important this really is. I didn't fully understand. Well, no, I think I understood it. I just never fully implemented it until I also read it in scripture. And maybe that's not a terrible thing. You should trust the Bible. But I didn't fully implement it until I really understood this verse in Proverbs. King Solomon told us, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." What that's telling us is that your innermost thoughts is what truly defines your character. Whatever you constantly tell yourself that you are is who you'll eventually become. The problem is that if you don't tell yourself who you are, and if you don't do it repeatedly every single day, somebody else will. And that might not be the worst thing in the world if you have amazing people around you, which is actually the second one. We'll get to there. But there have been studies done that about 80% of our thoughts throughout the day are negative. And that's not your fault. Well, maybe not all of it, but I would say the vast majority of that is because we are constantly bombarded with negativity. If you go and look up the news, go to Yahoo News, all you're going to see is negative headlines, because our eyes are not attracted to the positive thing. When you're driving down the road, you don't stop typically. I mean, sometimes you might, but you don't typically stop and just, oh, wow, that tree is pretty. Or, oh, wow, look at the sky. Maybe you do sometimes. But 100 times out of 100, if there's a fire on the side of the road, you're definitely going to look, right? Because we are attracted to negativity. For whatever reason, I don't know. There's probably different reasons for that. But we're constantly bombarded with negativity because that's where our eyes immediately go. The same study that showed that of our thoughts, 80% are typically negative throughout the day, that same study showed that about 95% of our thoughts, positive or negative, are repeating. That means only about 5% of your thoughts each day are new thoughts. So that means you are constantly, repeatedly telling yourself these negative things for one reason or another. You are constantly telling yourself these negative things. And if you do not tell yourself who you are and tell yourself repeatedly, positively, somebody else will determine who you are for you. That's what it's coming down to. And if you want to use this on the flip side to start training your mind to do it, I think the best way to do this is actually to put it into practice and help somebody else do it for themselves. It's like that idea, you can't really say you understand something until you can explain it to a 5-year-old. If you want to use this on the flip side and be a good leader and train a team, which is what I'm doing, which is why I need to get very good at this, start looking at your people, figuring out what they're good at, and telling them. We call it EPR, encourage, praise, and recognize. Be that one person in their life who is constantly telling them positive things, and you're not just going to be a leader, you're going to be a leader people want to follow, right? Because everybody's a leader. You have some kind of following one way or another. Not everybody's a good leader, though. Not everybody's a leader people want to follow. Sometimes you're forced to follow somebody, and it's not your choice. Be the leader who people really want to follow, and that alone will 10x your business. But this has to be very careful and very genuine. Don't give out fake compliments, because people will figure that out and you're never going to be trusted for that. Be very careful and genuine also for this reason. I have been told, and I've also noticed very quickly, you can say 99 amazing positive things to someone, but all they are going to remember is that one negative thing. And 95% of our thoughts every single day are repeating, they're reoccurring, and they only remember that one negative thing, which they are going to repeat in their minds. So if you want to really do this, you need to keep an eye on your mouth, or I don't know, just really watch your mouth. Be very careful and very genuine about it for other people, but also for yourself. I mean, this all applies to you. We are training your mind. But the second main point is to surround yourself with the right people. And I mean, this all kind of ties together, but if you can't figure out how to tell yourself who you are and tell yourself positively, find some good people and ask them for help. That's really what it comes down to. But this is why it's so important. Let me give you an example. We have found, well, this is why it's so important to find the right people and a good partner, because I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of these horses, but they're called Belgian horses. One Belgian horse is just pure muscle. They're massive. But one Belgian horse has been found to pull about 8,000 pounds on its own. Now, the impressive thing is that when you put two stranger horses together, they're not just going to double their output. We doubled the input, 2 horses, now not just one, now we have 2. They're not just going to pull 16,000 pounds, they're going to pull upwards of 22 to about 24,000 pounds. That's nearly triple. And they're strangers. That's pretty impressive. The amazing thing is that when you take those 2 stranger horses and actually train them and have them spend time together, they'll begin to pull about 32,000 pounds. That's about quadruple what one horse was able to do on its own, and we only doubled the output, or the input. We doubled the input, 1 horse to 2, and they, training and just feeding off of each other's energy, quadrupled their output because of momentum. Imagine you are trying to go this way when one horse is trying to go that way. It's not going to work. You need to be headed in the same direction with the right partner. And I'm going to give you one more example, and I didn't realize it until now, but we're going to use 2 analogies about animals. But in the biblical days, maybe even now, I don't actually know, but in the biblical days, there was this term being unequally yoked. And we don't really fully understand that now because most of us are not farmers, but what it means to be yoked is a farmer, if he wanted 2 of his oxen to work together, he would put a yoke on their necks, which is basically like a wooden contraption that would just hold them together. And that way they were forced to go in the same direction. So what it means and why it's so important to find the right people who are headed in the same direction as you is because you cannot be unequally yoked with somebody and be productive at the same time. So if we're using the oxen as an example, if one ox is this tall and the other one's this tall, the yoke is not going to work. It's just not. They're not going to be able to connect to each other because it's just slanted now, and now one is going to be like this, right? It's not going to work. But now imagine they're 2 of the same height, they're level, the yoke will fit, but the yoke won't work if one ox is trying to go this way and the other one is trying to go that way. And I'm sure you've heard this term of being unequally yoked, and Christians usually use this as an example for romantic relationships. You can't be unequally yoked with, or you can't be in a relationship with somebody if you guys are trying to head in different directions. But this applies to all relationships if you're required to work with the person. And here at this channel, if you're new, we talk about business, faith, family, and business, or faith, finance, and business, and some family, I guess. But you can't have a good business partner, have a good business running smoothly if everybody's moving in the same directions. You can get there in different ways, but the point is you need to be headed right, and everybody's headed right, but you can't work together if half of you are trying to head left. It's just not going to work. You'll never be able to build momentum, right? And the sad thing is with this is that you do have to be willing to lose people. And that was probably the hardest thing for me when I started in business, because I wanted to be in business with all of my best friends. But, we had different goals. That's not necessarily a bad, negative thing against them. We just had different goals. It didn't work. You have to be willing to lose people. And as I was thinking this video out, I was reminded of this passage. It's in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 4. It says, "Of course, your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of wild and destructive things they do. So they slander you. They slander your name." That's not always going to be the case, but sometimes that is. Because you are now behaving and training your mind to think differently, you're training your mind to think differently, you're going to begin to start behaving differently. And they're going to notice, you're going to notice. And they're going to slander you because of that sometimes, not every time, but expect it. Because, even scripture is telling us this. Not everybody's going to believe that your business is going to be a big business one day. Oh, how's the little side hustle going? That's what they're going to say, right? Yeah, every business owner has heard that. Everyone has heard that. That's not necessarily a negative thing against them, but when you step out of your typical zone of comfort and surround yourself with people who have higher, more positive identities, you'll actually find that your old group of friends, the old group of people you used to hang out with, are going to be a lot less attractive. And I know, it's going to be funny. That's not a negative thing against them, but you will notice that they're going to invite you and you're going to, actually, I don't really want to do that anymore. I just want to kind of put my head down and work. I want to grow. And those activities are going to become a lot less attractive, and that's not, again, a negative thing against them. That is just a reflection of a new identity forming. You are training your mind to think differently. That's a good thing, right? Not a negative thing against them. It's just a positive thing for you. And this is the last thing I'm going to say about training your mind, but this is so important because I have been told repeatedly as well that your business, because nobody is forcing you to work in your business's results will never surpass your identity. That means if you are not growing as a person mentally, physically, spiritually, your business will not grow either because nobody's forcing you to be there. You don't need to work that business. But if you want it to grow, your results are never going to surpass your identity. You need to grow and constantly train your mind to do that. Okay, and now we're thinking rich. Okay, this is how we get rich, but how do we stay rich? This one is very simple. We need to transform our minds. And this one, I'm going to go very practical. The training your mind, was a little bit more abstract. It can apply to anybody. So can the second one, this way of thinking, but transforming your mind, we're going to go very practical. And I'm actually going to give you some resources. There's this thing called the cash flow quadrants, and it's in this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or at least he popularized the idea of the cash flow quadrants. And if you've never read that book, let me explain. What that really does, what the quadrant says is that there's 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there are 4 squares, and these 4 squares represent the only 4 ways we can produce income. And I know you may not be, life is not always about money, but whoever controls your income controls your life. So this is why it's so important to understand how you're producing income. Not just the fact that you are producing income, but how you're producing income. And what the quadrant tells us is that there's 4 ways to produce income. And the first one is as an employee. That's where you have a job, you show up, you get paid, right? The second one is self-employed. Same thing. You don't have a job now. You just own the job, and you still have to show up to get paid. The third one is business owner, which is where you own a system that runs for you. You build a system that that just runs on its own. You don't run the business. You build a system that runs the business. Okay. The fourth one then is the investor. Now, what the quadrant tells us, or at least what Rich Dad, Poor Dad tells us, is that most people, what they'll do is they will start with 1 and 2. They will start with employee and self-employed. Now, this is so important. Even if you're a business owner, you need to understand this. If you're a business owner already, you still need to understand this. Because what people are doing is in their minds, they haven't trained their minds to think differently. They've been trained to think a very specific way. In their minds, they are either employees or self-employed, because what they're really looking for is, of course, an income, but the psychology behind it is they are looking for a sense of security and stability in knowing that if they show oh my god, if they show, I need some water, I don't have any. If they show up, they will get paid, right? That is the sense of security. The other two, the investor and the business owner, I'm going to explain the pros and cons to both. I'm just explaining the psychology behind it, the mindset behind it. The other two, the business owner and the investor, they are looking for freedom and they're willing to take on risk for that freedom. Okay, they want to control their income. Because, this is why it's so important now, because whoever controls your income controls your life. I am going to argue that the first two, the employee and the self-employed, even though they're looking for stability and security, it's really only a false sense of stability and security because somebody else is controlling your income and your schedule. And I help people implement these different wealth strategies all the time. That's what my business is, if you don't know. But we help them all the time, and I run into these stories all the time. You don't know what's going to happen to you until it does. I've worked with top accountants at their firm who were fired with zero notice. And it's not even because the company went under, it's because the company sold and the new company just wanted to bring on their own staff, right? And this person was the top accountant at their firm. You don't know you're going to get fired until you're fired sometimes. Is that really stable? Is that really secure? Yeah, as long as you have a job, right? And now that person is struggling to get a job. I've run into that with nurses and doctors. I've run into that with every single industry, with teachers. These nurses and doctors fired with zero notice because they just weren't a good fit anymore. I don't know, whatever it was. They were making $200,000 a year and all of a sudden they're at zero, and because they didn't have the financial education, they hadn't trained their mind to be rich, even though they were producing a ton of income, everything just went down, right? Because they didn't train their mind and they definitely didn't transform their mind to stay rich, okay? It is a false sense of security. If you want to transform your mind, what you need to do, this applies to anything, is identify where you're at, identify the habits that got you there, and if you want to transform your mind, identify where you want to be, and identify the habits that would get you there, and just consistently, constantly do those habits. Complete those tasks, whatever it is. That's all you need to do. So if you are on this quadrant, which the only reason you wouldn't be on this quadrant is if you're unemployed, but if you are on this quadrant and you want freedom and to transform your mind to stay rich, you need to learn how to control your income. Whoever controls your income controls your life. The psychology is you're looking for security, but that doesn't... What's more secure? Somebody who can show up to work and get paid, but they're at the will of their employer? Or the person who can, no matter what, control and figure out a way to produce their income, even though it's not stable. Their income goes up and down, but their average is way higher than the normal employee. Which one is more stable? The one who controls their income, right? So identify the habits that got you to be an employee. Figure out where you would rather be. Maybe you do want to be self-employed. That's fine, but figure out what those habits are to be self-employed. If you're going to be self-employed, I think you should just be an employee, because now not all the liability is on you. Anyway, that's a different conversation. But this is how you transform your mind. Figure out what the habits are, identify where you want to be, figure out what those habits are, and do those habits. That's it. And I could keep talking about this all day, but again, like last video, I know when I'm going to start rambling. This is my business. So if you want to implement a wealth strategy, if you want to start putting actual practical steps in place and you don't want to do it on your own, you can check the link in my description or just continue watching my videos. I can help you do it. My team can help you do it. If not, just keep watching the videos. They're free, and I hope at least they're bringing some value. But I will see you in the next video. All right.